So first and foremost, a little bit about myself. You might have saw that in the workbook. By the way, does everyone have their workbook printed off or have access to that workbook that Mary sent you? Very important that you have that.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, please get that, because it's been said that the faintest ink is better than the strongest memory. And that's why we use that approach. We want you to have a workbook. You can record the words that we'll have given to you to fill in the blank. And it's proven that you remember more when you actually write something out, not just type it up. When you write it out, there's some type of a connection between the brain and your hand when you write something, that it helps store that memory even better. So let's go over here. First story I want to start out with is Michelangelo. I don't know if people remember Michelangelo, but he was a great Italian sculptor. He did the Sistine Chapel, painting on the ceiling. He was an amazing, amazing man. Well, as the story goes, he was out walking one day with a huge block of marble. He had it in his wheelbarrow, and he's wheeling this thing along. Off in the distance, one of his friends sees him. He says, "Hey, Mike." So he looks and he just keeps on moving because this wheelbarrow is heavy. He says, "Hey, Giuseppe, you want to talk to me? You catch up with me." So he keeps wheeling this wheelbarrow, and Giuseppe catches up with him. He says, "Hey, Mike," he says, how do you do it? How you take that ugly block of marble and make it those beautiful sculptures?" Well, when Michelangelo heard this, he knew he was going to have to explain. So he brought his wheelbarrow to a halt, sat down with a thud, took out his kerchief, wiped his brow, and he said, "Giuseppe, you got all them mixed up. What you just called, it's an ugly block of marble. What she already has, that a beautiful sculpture already inside of it. All Michelangelo do, knock off the rough edges, polish it up, and let the real beauty come out." So here's my point. In this program today, you already have what it takes to learn how to become digitally competent. We're just going to give you some tools to do it more easily. Now, many of us are far down that road. You already know a lot about these things, but you're here to grow and to learn even more. And typically, that's the type of people come to a program like this. They're already doing a lot of things right. They just want to do a few more things right. So that's what we're going to do. Now, with that workbook that you have, as I mentioned, I do want you to write the notes in as we go along. I'll give you the keywords. I'll have a couple slides, but I'm not going to give you a zillion slides. It's going to be more interactive here today. So we're going to follow along that workbook. I'll have a few slides to illustrate some things, but that's just how we're going to work. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so the purpose of today's program is to help you examine or re-examine your paradigms about communicating in a digital world. I know some of you might be thinking, "Oh gosh, I wish my colleague was here, or my team members were here, or I wish my boss was here. He should or she should be able to see this because it's important." Well, the program is going to be recorded, so you'll be able to have access to it if you'd like them to share in it later. All right, so let's move ahead. Housekeeping guidelines. Please turn off your cell phones to silent mode. Now, one of the things I always do when I start a program, or before I get started, I'll take my landline, I'll unplug it just because I don't want to be interrupted. I'll put my cell phone on mute. I'll also have I'll shut my door, and we'll talk more about this in the program because these are things that we don't want to violate, gets us in trouble. I have a sign on my door, so I'm working out of the house. But if my wife walks by the door, she knows I'm in a session, and don't bother me. So that's important. Now we'll see a little video on that later where it can blow up on somebody if they don't pay attention to that. So here we go. Let's go moving along here. So digital communication. Here's the first number one. What is digital communication? So a definition for digital communication is the activities that transmit messages and information via digital channels, i.e. emails, text, video, conferencing, etc. So that under number one, that's the first word you want to put in there is digital. All right. So how about this? Let's go to the next one here. In your workbook, you see that number two, digital natives. So digital natives, that's a word that it's interesting, these are people who have grown up under the omnipresent influence of the internet and other modern information technology. So these are people that were born typically after 1980. We'll talk more about that in a second. Matter of fact, number three, digital immigrants, that's the word, immigrants, are people who were not born in the digital era before 1980 and have later adopted the new technology. comes from Mark Prensky. So I don't know about you, but I'm a digital immigrant. And that means I've got to catch up to the rest of everyone else that has been born after 1980. They just do it so much more easily. Okay, so number 4. So digital body language. Now looking in your workbook here, digital body language is everything we do or say, don't do and say online that we can analyze to understand each other and what we want to do. So let me talk about that for a second. So a lot of times people say, well, if you don't know, what you don't know won't hurt you. In the digital world, what you don't know can hurt you. So it's important to realize what it is you need to do digitally when you're in communication with other people, whatever format you're using, whether it's emails, text, video, conferencing, whatever. But that's important to know that that's what digital body language is. And there are some definite similarities to regular body language, and we'll talk about that later. But the key is we use as much as we can of what we already know to use this business of digital communication. We need to put those together. All right, so let's take a look at number 5. So that's, just show you a slide with this. So emojis, these are very popular, and they're becoming more popular in the business setting. Okay, now in the outside of work, they've been all over the place, but they're becoming more accepted. Some cultures, some business cultures actually endorse these and promote the use of emojis. But what are they? First off, comes from it's a Japanese word. It's a Japanese portmanteau of 2 words, e meaning picture and moji meaning character. And there's probably millions of them out there. Let's take a look here. So what is the purpose of using an emoji? Well, this would be 5B. The primary function of emoji is to fill in emotional, that's the word, emotional cues, otherwise missing from a typed conversation. Now we're going to learn later. I'll say a few things a couple times here, but it's estimated that 50% of digital communication, go to emails, 50% of emails there's some misinterpretation in the message that's sent. Over 50%. So the emotional cues are part of that people don't get when you're just communicating through email. That's where these emojis come in and can help fill in some of the blanks, at least the emotional cues. So, okay. So let's take a look. Now I've got in the workbook there, the primary function of an emoji is to fill in emotional cues between missing from typed conversation. So is that true or false? It would be true. It would be true. Okay. So number 6, what is the average percentage of all communication among work teams that is virtual? So I'm going to give you a chance to fill in or to circle the appropriate percentage under number 6 in your workbook. So what is the average percentage of all communication among work teams that is virtual? Let's see. Mark, what'd you put down? Which one did you circle?
70.
70, okay. Lenore, which one did you circle?
50%.
Okay. And Rita, which one did you circle? I think you're muted, Rita. Ben, which one did you circle?
60% to round it out, all 3.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, according to the research that's out there, it's 70%, which is amazing. That's what in terms of today, communication among work teams that is virtual is now 70%. That's worldwide, mind you, worldwide. Okay, so let's go to number 7. Now we send 306.4 billion emails every day. So that's the number I want you to put in there. Worldwide, 306.4 billion emails are being sent every day, with the average person receiving. Circle the one that you think is accurate, A, B, or C. What do you think the average person is receiving? Ben, which one did you circle?
175.
Okay. And Lenore, how about you?
I actually said 250 because you get so many advertisements.
Yeah, sure. Michael, which one did you circle? Just curious.
I went with 200.
Okay. And Daniel, how about you?
250.
Okay, great. All right. So, and believe me, you'll probably get different statistics if you look long enough on the internet. The one I came up with was 200 emails per day on average. Now, I heard someone else say, I think in her book, Erica Dewan says 30, but it depends on who you are. But on average, they're saying a couple hundred a day is what most people are receiving. Not saying they're opening them or answering them, but they're getting them. Okay, number 8. Now, the next part of our quiz here. According to the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, 50% of the time, the tone of our emails is misinterpreted. True or false?
True.
True. Who said that?
I did, Ben.
Yep.
True.
That is true, Dan. Ben, that is true. Yeah, 50% of the time, our tone of our emails are misinterpreted. That's something I kind of referred to earlier. Okay, go to the next page here, page 9, or not page 9, page 4, number 9. So let me just stop sharing for a moment here so I can see everybody. All right, so number 9, in 2015, Pew survey found that 90%, that's the percentage here, of all cell phone owners frequently carry their phones with them, with 76%, that's the number, of them admitting they rarely or never turn off their cell phones. Isn't it amazing? So it tells you people we're attached to these things now. I know I check mine far too frequently, it seems. Number 10, the average person, that's the words, average person spends nearly 116 minutes every day on social media, which over an average lifetime would add up to 5 years and 4 months. So 5 years and 4 months of our life are spent on social media. My goodness. Okay, number 11. Today, with the help of Daniel Goleman. How many people here are familiar with Daniel Goleman? Daniel Goleman, real big emotional quotient. I would recommend you take a look at some of his work out there. He started back in the 90s, mid 90s. He wrote the book Emotional Intelligence. Very, very powerful body of work there. In any event, there's assessments out there on emotional intelligence. I handle one myself with my clients, but the fact is it's very important, especially in the world of virtual communication. So today, with the help of Dan Goleman's emotional intelligence and empathy, that's the second word there, these have become buzzwords. And we all have an emotional quotient. Nice thing about emotional intelligence is it's something we can improve upon and get better at. Number 12, research has shown that the business owners and CEOs who have the highest EQ intelligence typically have the most successful and profitable companies. That's becoming more prevalent in the virtual world. We had this, well, you've heard about it. I've heard about it firsthand, where companies say, hey, you know what? We got to get people back to the workplace here. We can't be sitting home anymore. We got a building we've got here, and that's the best way to serve our clients or our members. Well, fact is that there's an emotional bit of baggage that goes along with asking people to come back to work in an environment where they're not necessarily sure it's totally safe yet, with this pandemic that's been happening. So that's something we need to pay attention to, and that is the emotional health of our employees or our team members, because that has a direct impact on their engagement and whether or not they want to even be in your organization. And we all know now, right? There's a huge gap in the number of employees that are on the job and are needed. Just a lot of people have either retired or made other arrangements, and they're not working at the same levels they were before. So they're not employed as much. So there's a lot of companies are looking for help. All right, let's move on. So number 13, reading emotion within the digital nature of the modern workplace, to put it quite frankly, is difficult. It's difficult because it's very limited. You might see my face, you might you might hear my voice, but when you're in person with somebody, it's much easier to get that pulse of what that person is really thinking and feeling. So it's, to say the least, it's difficult to read emotions. Easier with a video, certainly. Very difficult with just an email or a text. And that's where we get into some real trouble. Number 14, digital disconnect leads us to misinterpret, overlook, or ignore signals and cues or overreact to them, creating entirely new waves of organizational dysfunction. Every organization has dysfunction, but some of them have a lot more than others. And this whole business of digital, it's contributed to that just because we just don't understand people as well. We don't read them as well. All right. So let's go back. Now we're going to go to our, just go back here for a second, share the screen. And so let's go to the next thing here. I do want to mention this, the use of emojis. In the use of emojis across generations, it is important to understand preferences and knowing when to adapt to others' needs and when to set proper boundaries. So when you use emojis, it's good to know what the culture in your organization finds acceptable. I'll talk more about this later, but we want to mirror people. We want to mirror their behavior. You know, we do that with in his book, John Malloy wrote a book on dressing for success and success. And he had a couple of books out. He said we really need to work on mirroring people's body language. So when you're in person with someone, they cross their legs, you cross their legs. If they open their arms, you open their arms. The idea is to just mirror people's body language. It allows them to subconsciously see that you're not a threat and that you're like them. Same thing with emojis. If people use emojis, I'm saying is use emojis. We'll talk more about that later, the other things we can do, but understand what other people's preferences are, because that will go a long ways in helping us communicate with people and when we can build that trust and rapport with them. Okay, so let's go on to we're going to do a digital body language quiz. So we're going to have you take the quiz in the workbook right there in the part B. I'll give you some time to do this. I'll walk you through it, but I'd like you to just answer in the workbook. Number 1, am I a digital immigrant or a digital native? So write that in. So if you're born after 1980, you're a native. If you're born before, you're going to be an immigrant. Number 2, how does the demographic affect how I perceive daily communications? So in other words, if you're an immigrant or a native, how does that affect your ability to perceive the daily communications you're receiving? Does it make it harder, make it more difficult? Does it mean you're running to catch up? Wow. Just in your own words, a few words, how does that make you feel about that situation, depending on your demographic? Number 3, what are the best channels for others to digitally communicate with you or me? In this case, you. So just jot that down. Which do you prefer? Okay, do you prefer if someone calls you on the phone first and then email you if they can't get hold of you through a phone call? Or is it you like emails? If people are going to communicate with you, is email the best way to start? And then, or maybe some people texting, hey, you can always reach me, just text me. Or I'll tell people, if you really want to get to me immediately, cell phone. That's the best way to get to me. First cell phone, then email. My cell phone's with me, I'll hear it. If you call me, if you text me. So, but this is important to know what's the best way for people to communicate. Which way do you want people to communicate with you digitally? Okay. Next, number 4, do you know the best channels to digitally communicate with your clients and friends or your colleagues? That would be a good question, because sometimes people say, hey, she's ignoring me. Well, no, it's just that she doesn't check her emails, but every hour or 2 hours. But if you called her, she'd pick right up, or vice versa. Some people, they'll never answer their darn phone. I was talking to one company out of Detroit, and this is the HR person. And she said in an email, she said to me, I never pick up the phone. If you want to communicate with me, you have to, only way I communicate with anybody is through email. Now, this is an HR person. Can you imagine having an issue on site in your business and they get a hold of the person and she wasn't going to pick up the phone? I don't know if that's the best thing, but it's something to know about. Okay, so next, number 5, what are my digital body language pet peeves? So what bugs you when it comes to digital body? What do you not like when people do certain things? digitally. Maybe they might use too darn many emojis, or maybe they use too darn many exclamation points, or maybe they'll just they text you consistently until you finally answer them. They keep pestering you. I don't know. Write that down. What are your pet peeves?
Text abbreviations.
Yeah, there we go. We'll talk about that later. Sure. So, matter of fact, let's add this. You can unmute yourself right now. What are some of your digital body language pet peeves? Anyone who would like to share?
R, the letter R instead of ARE. The letter R.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
hate
There you
that.
go.
The
Thanks,
letter R,
Ben.
the letter U.
Sure. What else? What are some of the other pet peeves you might have? Anyone?
I would say being on a group text that maybe it's not real relevant to what's going on, but your phone keeps blowing up,
Oh, yeah. That would.
and you're like, oh my God, can I get out of this conversation?
Yes, absolutely. And it happens in emails too. We'll talk about that later. People get these
One of,
chain emails. Go ahead. Yes.
one of mine is when people use text messaging when they
Mhm.
really should be using email communication, because
There
the
you go.
text ends up being, 5, and whatever. It ends up being way too long.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. Okay. Michael, what about you?
I was gonna actually say the thing Sarah just said. It's the super long text that could be a phone call or an email.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Totally agree with you. All right. Who else has something they could add to that?
Can I ask you a question?
Sure, Ben. Go ahead.
A long time ago, I heard that if you want to get a message across, 7% of the message is delivered by way of words, 38% by tone of voice, 55% by body language. So when you send a text or an email, you only get 97% of the message, 7% of the message.
That's
Is
right.
that true? You
That
believe
is correct. Yeah, Ben, that's based on Dr. Albert Moravian's work, and
Right.
what that accurate way of saying that is when the tone of the words being used are contradictory to the words that are actually being used, then those percentages are in place. But regardless, the body language and the way we say the words make up the most of the message in most cases. So absolutely. Great question. Okay, Susan, thanks for joining us today. I'm glad you're here. We are going to record this session, so Phil, rest assured you'll get the whole program. Make sure you have your workbook handy there because we're using the workbook. Okay, so next, what do I value most when others communicate with me, i.e., or clarity, accountability, actionableness? What are some of the things you value most when other people communicate with you? Just jot that in. Number 6. We're on part B. Number 6 in your workbook. What do you value most when others communicate with you? Clarity, accountability, actionableness, and whatever else you can think of. So jot that down. So these are things that again, when you're communicating with other people, these are things you might even want to share with them. Say, hey, when I communicate with people virtually or in person, these are the things that I value. So if you have a group of people that work for you, you have a team that works for you or you work with, the more people understand each other and how they prefer to be communicated to in this digital age, then that would open up those opportunities for clearer communication and less misunderstandings. So, okay, so let's move ahead and go right back to my PowerPoint here. And let's go to the next one. Okay, so we're going to talk about the 12 top virtual communication mistakes. So like we said earlier, digital communication is everything we do and don't do. And sometimes our communication mistakes are things we just don't know about, so we're not doing. But before we go any further, I'm going to show you something else up here. Let's see. Where did we put that? Hold on a second. Oh, I do want to show you this. So netiquette, it's not in your workbook, but this is one of the words we looked at earlier in our puzzle. So what is netiquette? Now, there are a lot of definitions out there. There's someone looked at one from the Oxford Dictionary, but this one I liked even better. Ashley Brooks put this together. Netiquette is essentially rules and norms for interacting with others on the internet in a considerate, respectful way. Makes sense. So respect. And let's face it, with a digital communication, there are a number of people out there that do abuse it. You know, certain type of marketing organizations. It's not. I wouldn't say it's healthy in the way some people approach the use of digital communication for their own needs and wants. We can go into that on another program, I'm sure. But in any event, let's take a look at this next slide. So what is the reason for the logical sequence of numbers? So take your time and write that down in your workbook there at the top under part C. What do you say? What's the logical sequence of these numbers? So take a moment, write it in, and then when everybody has a chance to do it, we'll come back and we'll look at the answer. Okay, who's figured it out? Let's see. Mark, hold off for just a second. I think you might know the answer. Raina, what do you think it is?
Well, being a numbers person, I would say, I mean, when you say logical, that's kind of the, I mean, I would start from 0 and I, 0, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, in that sequence. However, logical to one person isn't necessarily logical to someone else.
Okay.
Depends on the application.
Okay, so all right. Susan, what would be your answer?
Actually the same. I was just thinking, except for missing the 1,
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, anyone else?
Well, I thought that the first 2 letters, 85 equals 13, 49, 13, 76,
Yeah.
13.
Yeah.
Then 0 throws it off.
Yeah, what the heck? Well, I'm gonna let you know a little secret. And Mark, you probably know what is the answer, Mark?
I don't know.
Oh, I thought you knew the answer to this one. Okay, well, here you
I
go.
probably did. I don't remember though.
How about this? They're in alphabetical order.
Oh,
8, 5, 4, FO, 9, NI, SE for 7, SI for 6. See, now here's the thing. See, we assumed that was because it was numbers, that there was some kind of a logical sequence. And this is the same thing when it comes to digital communication. We assume certain things that are so far off based on a perception that's just not accurate. So this is just a little wake-up call for us. So when it comes to 12 virtual communication mistakes, we may be doing things that we say, well, I think you're perfectly all right. I don't think anything wrong with that. But it could be to other people, depending on who you're communicating with. So let's go to our workbook again, and I'm going to hit stop share. So let's walk through these. Below are some of the most common communication blunders made in virtual communication. As more of the workforce becomes remote, we need to be aware of these errors and how to correct them. So I'm going to give you the answers. You fill them in on the worksheet here. First, talking in public places or while in transit. You know how it is if you walk into a credit union, they even have signs now say, get off your phone when you're going to get up to the window there because it's distracting. So talking in public, if you're on, not maybe so much you're in Michigan, but if you're in New York, you're taking a subway, it is very rude to be sitting there having a conversation with someone on the telephone when other people have to listen to it. Number 2, trying to multitask and talk on the phone. Now, here's a little exercise that I want you to practice. Yeah, let's see if we can walk through this quickly. Great exercise to share with your colleagues if you want them to understand the fact that it's really not a good idea to multitask when they're communicating with anybody. Lenore, would you work with me on this one? Okay, so here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to count from start counting from one. No, here's what we like to do. I want you to give me your ABCs starting from A. Just go ahead and run through the alphabet.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z.
Great. Now she is an expert. She has memorized that alphabet. Very, very good. So Lenore, I want you to do this now. I want you to count backwards from 100. Just start counting backwards.
Like I'm going under anesthesia. Okay, here we go.
Go further than
99,
that.
98, 97, 96, 95, 94, 93, 92, 91, 90.
Stop right
89.
there. You are good. She can do this, right? Very good. Now here's what I like to do. I want you to give us the alphabet, go A, and then go to 100, and then go B, go to 99, C, 98, and go from there. So start at the beginning. Go ahead.
1.
I'm sorry, I can't control your music here.
99, 2, 98, 3, 97, 4, 96, 5, 95.
Okay. Well, actually, that's kind of a variation of this, but I want you to start with the alphabet. Start with, say A, and then go to say 100, and then
100,
B, 99,
99.
and then go from there. Keep going. C.
98.
I'm probably not the right person for this assignment.
That's okay, Lenore. No, everybody would not do very well at this. Why? Because we're doing two things. We're asking you to hook up one part of your brain with the other part of the brain trying to work. So the logical, and then, so what we're saying is you're trying to multitask. That's the same thing when we multitask. I have a friend of mine belongs to Mensa. Okay. I had him on the phone one day and he was doing something on his computer and he sounded quite stupid, frankly, because he was doing something and he was trying to have a conversation with me at the same time. So what I'm saying is anybody that says they can multitask is fooling themselves because you cannot do it. It's proven. Cannot multitask nearly as efficiently as you can if you just focus on one thing at a time. So what that means is people come to your office, turn away from your computer. Don't look at your computer while you're talking to somebody, okay? Or if you're on the phone with somebody and you're starting to look on something online, don't do that if it's not relative to the phone call because you are not going to be totally there. Your brain is going back and forth and just can't do it very well. So there's my point. Trying to multitask is not a good idea when it comes to communicating with other people, especially when you're doing it digitally. Next, number 3, talking on speakerphone. That can be very annoying to people because it picks up sounds. Maybe they can't hear you as well. So when possible, do not speak on your speakerphone. Now, if you're driving, that's a different story. That's how it's set up in your vehicle most times. Let's move on. I'm going to kind of put the pedal to the metal here. We're going to speed ahead a bit. Number 4, forgetting team members' time zones. So like, look at Daniel today, so he's calling in from Colorado. That's 2 hours ahead of us. So it's like 10 after 7 in the morning there. So, but when you're calling people today, obviously they work all around the globe. Be aware of their time zones. Now I do have that little, if you click on that link that I put there for you, World Time Buddy, that'll give you a time zone. It's right there under number 4. If you have the live link on your book and on the electronic version, you can click on that. And they'll tell you time zones immediately. So before you call somebody, check that out. Okay. Number 5, being ignorant of cultural or religious differences. I.e., Israel Sabbath is from sundown on Friday, their time through sundown on Saturday. So if you're talking to people in other countries, it's important to be aware of some of those cultural differences or religious differences. Number 6, not considering others' communication comfort zones. Others is the word. So in other words, some people hate being on video. They don't want to get dressed up, or they don't want to have to put their makeup on, or they don't want to put their whatever. The point is, just be aware, not always is video the best way to communicate with somebody. It might be just a quick phone call, right? You don't need to get on video, just phone call. So a couple other things. Some people know, some people don't. When you're writing an email and you put all caps on words, what does that mean? Daniel, what does it mean?
Means you're putting emphasis on that word.
Yes. In addition to that, what else does it mean?
You're yelling at them.
Yeah. Thanks, Ben. Yeah, you're yelling at them.
I found that the hard way.
Yeah, see, so careful with this. We might be thinking, oh, we're just going to be enthusiastic and emphasize. No. That can be interpreted as shouting. What did I do wrong? Next, here's another little tip that's not in the workbook here, but remember back to mirroring people, you know, how you mirror their body language. something else you can do when you're communicating with people. If you see that they email you, okay, that's a preference. And if they say, hello, Mark, or hello, Tom, okay, well, I email them back. Guess what? I'm going to use hello, Lenore. Hello. I'm going to use their words. I'm going to use their structure because that makes them comfortable. So that's just a little tip. Same thing with texting. If, hey, they don't use your first name, don't use their first name. Now, typically texting, it's an abbreviation and we just want to do it quick. So typically people don't use people's first names, but a lot of boomers like me, I'm kind of, it's kind of in my genes where I say, hello, how are you? We do these types of things and it's a little more formal but find out what the other people prefer and do it that way. Okay, so let's see what else I got here. So that's 6. Number 7, being unprepared for phone meetings. So use a checklist to prepare for the meetings. In other words, I have a checklist before I start a call like this. I'm going to make sure my phone's off. I'm going to make sure my cell phone's on mute. I'm going to make sure my door's shut. I'm going to make sure got a couple dogs. They're in their crate, right? And we're going to show you something in just a minute when things go crazy. If you don't prepare for that, let's go there right now. So hopefully technology works for us here today. It's going to take a second to set this up. All right, let's go to the next slide. Now, some of you may have seen this. It was on YouTube. It's been all over YouTube. It happened about 3 or 4 years ago. But there's this BBC correspondent, Professor Robert Kelly, and this is on national world television. Okay, this is happening, world television. And I'll let you see what happens. Now, I'm going to have to clear the ad as soon as we get on here. Let's see what happens.
Scandals happen all the time. The question is, how do democracies respond to those scandals?
And what will it mean for the wider region? I think one of your children has just walked in. I mean, shifting sands in the region. Do you think relations with the North may change?
I would be surprised if they do. Pardon me.
That's right. Carry on.
My apologies.
What's this going to mean for the region?
My apologies. South Korea's policy choices on North Korea have been severely limited in the last.
Okay, so can you imagine that happening? That's real. If you go online, there's other people that have done crazy things too, but that have been recorded. But it shows you, make sure your door's locked, make sure the dogs are put away. And these are things that are helpful. They just won't embarrass you. So something to think about. All right, let's go ahead. Number 9. So someone mentioned this earlier, writing chain letters. That is continuing to use an email containing the original subject line sent to everyone. So sometimes what happens is someone sends out an email and it includes everybody. Then 2 people decide to carry on the conversation and they're using the same link, right? Or same email. And people are everyone that's originally on that email starts to see this conversation that goes on back and forth. So just be aware of those. Send a separate email if you want to communicate to somebody. Don't use the original one that was sent with everybody that was carbon copied. Okay, number 10. Sending texts or emails impulsively. So that's a virtual mistake. Wait until you're in a decent frame of mind before responding and hitting send. So maybe somebody sends something to you and it emotionally triggers you. Hold on. Don't maybe wait 10 minutes or wait a day before you send something back. It's too easy to hit that button. Number 11, not using common sense. So use the scheduler app, which will allow you to write the message, save it, and then get a push notification the time you want to hit send. So that's another app that's out there you could use. So if you want to write it out, but don't send it right away because you want to check what was sent, what was going to be sent, that would be helpful. And the number 12, assuming readers know how you feel. So be aware of how your tone is being perceived in your text and email. Begin your communication like a telephone call and make a personal connection first. So these are just some basic guidelines. This comes from Pamela Lagoria, so you know that. And I've listed those references for you at the end of the workbook. Okay, let's go on to number 20. Back to the share screen. We're going to go back over here. Okay, so 20 sins not to commit on video calls. Okay, so let's take a look at that. Number 1, you don't put your cell phone or landline on silent mode before you call. I mentioned that earlier. So silent mode. Number two, your video is turned off. This is to be seen as optional, yet keeping it on is the best way to build trust and rapport. Now, I know on this call right now, some people have put their video off. That's fine. You know, you got to go do something. But if you really want to create a trust and rapport when you're having a meeting with people, don't make sure your screen's up. And it's also recommended that you keep your audio on, because if it's like a meeting, right? If you're at the meeting, Lenore, with your team members, you know, people aren't going to walk out of the room and still expect to be part of that conversation. So treat a Zoom call meeting just like it would be a live meeting where people are there. Keep your mute button off, video on, and that opens up that opportunity to communicate easily. Number three, you think a Zoom call is always necessary. We mentioned that earlier. And maybe it's just a phone call, or maybe it's just a text or an email. How many people here have heard of Slack? Just raise your hand. Okay, I didn't either. Okay, till about a week ago when I was reading through this material. So Slack, it's an app that's out there. It's you can put your whole company. Mark, what would you say with, go ahead and give us an explanation for Slack.
It's a communications tool, project collaboration. Guess that's a simple explanation.
Yeah, you can email people through it, video calls, everything all in one place, I guess. But again, these are some options that are out there. And there's going to be more of these things coming down the pipe. There are more and more of these going to be, the apps are going to get more and more sophisticated, and it's just going to keep getting better and better in that way. Okay, so let's move ahead. Number 4, you don't turn on mute ever. Now that's the other end of it. You know, sometimes you need to turn on mute because there's noises in the background, etc. Number 5, once you've turned on mute, you never turn it off. Okay, now don't become a video and call wallflower. You know, so people they're just there, but they're not. Number 6, you're hogging airtime, which means you just talk and not giving other people a chance to get in on the conversation. Number 7, you're sending private messages via Zoom chat. Now, here's the danger of that private messages. Many times, like this call here today, is being recorded. If you send something and it was not in the best interest of everybody that was on the call, or they could be used against you down the road. That's not going to happen here today. But the fact is, on company meetings, be careful with that. Number 8, you're clicking out of Zoom windows during the calls. So if you're on a call where you're expected to be there and participate, by clicking out, people are assuming, oh, he's probably doing something else, or he's just not interested. Next, number 9, you're treating Zoom meetings as less formal than in-person meetings. So here's my point there. Dress appropriately. Make sure your office looks presentable back there. These are things you do if you had people over to your office at your business or organization. So just take the time to make sure your office is presentable, or that you're dressed properly. And we know all about that. Make sure the lighting is good. I think I mentioned this here later. I'll mention something else in a moment, but that's important to know about dress, lighting, office appearance. You've heard the stories where people, well, that's coming up. I'll get to that. How about this one? You're joining the Zoom late or leaving early, number 10. So what does that indicate? You're too busy, too important. Okay, so just be aware of that. Or excuse yourself if you have to leave early, or mention the fact that you're sorry that you were late for whatever reason. That's just common courtesy. It's part of that netiquette. Number 11, you're planning for only the top half of your outfit to be visible, right? You know what happens? Sometimes emergencies happen, things happen. You got someone spills coffee, you spill coffee on yourself. And if you get up and you just have boxer shorts on, that's an image that people aren't going to forget. So be prepared. Next, number 12, you aren't looking at the camera, into the camera. So do what you can. In some cases you can't, because you got multi-screen and you're looking to the right, you're looking at somebody. Like when I'm looking at Mark right now, I'm looking down. But if I'm looking at Wendy, I should be looking straight ahead. But just as often as you can, look into that camera. And that way it just creates that eye contact that you need to continue.
Will the technology ever go that you have the camera in the center of the screen? Because it's hard to look at the camera. I'm looking up versus looking at you. The normal human thing is to look eye to eye.
Yes.
I'm now looking at you eye to eye, but I'm not.
Yes.
Now I am.
Yes. And we have to understand that. But as much as we can, if we can set it up, we can look straight ahead, that's going to be helpful. At least when you're having that conversation. If you're just, listening, that's one thing to other people, but it's something to be aware of. Let's see. Next, number 13, smiling. Hey, from time to time, smile. People want, like you do in the normal conversation, smile from time to time. Show expression. Number 14, your viewers are looking up at the bottom of your chin. So angle that camera or your laptop, however it is, if you need to set it up on something, I've got mine actually, my screen is set up on, it's about, I'd say about 12 inches in the air, 13 inches in the air. So otherwise I'd be looking down like this. So things you can do to rearrange your screen to make it higher or lower, whatever you need to do. Okay, next, 15. You aren't giving any thought to your background settings. You mentioned that earlier. So just be aware. We know we work out of the house now. Most of us do, 70% plus. So the fact is, just make sure it looks halfway decent back there. If you like, you do what some people do, like Lenore, you can cloud your background. That's great. You can do you can put the, what do we call that when you have the scene behind you?
Virtual background.
Virtual background, yes. So just one thing about that, and we all know it, if you don't have a good green screen, you're gonna get ghosted, when you turn your head too fast. And even green screens don't prevent all of that. I've tried it. I've gotten the best screens you can get, and you still get a little that head movement that creates this kind of like a ghost behind you. So just do the best you can with that. Next, you think headphones are optional. Headphones, unless you have a very good sound system, just be aware how you are coming across. I like to use the headset just because I can hear better because I have two earphones on, but I'm sure that my quality is best. But again, it's up to you. If you have there's pretty good systems out there, but make sure your audio is good. 17, you aren't checking your Wi-Fi before the Zoom meeting starts. It's a big challenge today. I ended up having to go to a commercial grade of bandwidth, just because I wasn't getting it, with the regular residential type. With everybody in this neighborhood, they moved into their homes because they were working from home. It was terrible on Zoom calls. People kept getting this message that I had low bandwidth, but be aware of that, the Wi-Fi, how that's going. Then leaving yourself vulnerable to Zoom bombing. So there are some precautions that Zoom takes with that now, or Microsoft platforms, but just be aware. And if you do ever get bombed, what are you going to do? What can you do? Make sure you know which button to hit fast, to close that meeting off. Next, 19, you aren't turning off your notifications before sharing your screen. So if I were to share my screen and had all kinds of notifications that were up and that was distracting, things you don't want to do. Number 20, you're sharing your screen when it's not necessary. So maybe if I, for instance, kept that slide up that was irrelevant, why would I want to keep that slide up? That's irrelevant at this point. So things like that. All right, let's go on. Now it's getting close to 9:30. It's about 9:26. We did get a little bit of a later start, but I'm going to cover the information. We may go a little bit past 9:30, but if anyone has to leave, I understand. But we're going to keep moving. Okay, so on this section here on page 7, bridging the digital communication gap between generations. So I just kind of paraphrase what we have here. Number 1, the primary rule that must be observed is to know and, here's the word, respect communication preferences of the recipient. In order to do this, one must become conversant and comfortable with every communication medium in use today. So what that suggests, hey, if your people like to talk on Zoom, good, do Zoom. If they want to be text. Whoever it is, if it's a customer or a client or a colleague, find out what they prefer and go with that. So now, number 2, how technology is different for each generation. So I've kind of summarized that down here, but I'd like you to take your pen or pencil or highlighter, and I want you to highlight some of these things that I'm going to share with you here. So in terms of the tech behavior, just highlight these words. Older generations tend to use their phones mostly for making calls. Just highlight that. Whereas younger generations, a phone is their digital window to the world. So you might highlight younger generations' phone digital to the window to the world. Phones are used for social media, going online, texting, emailing, playing games, listening to music, and recording and watching videos. So recognize the younger generations, their phone is their universe. Let's go down to the box there. So boomers, That's boomers. I'm a boomer. These are people born between 45 and 65. Current population is about 76 million. That's significant to understand that. They prefer a balance between email, voicemail, telephone, face-to-face communication, and meetings. I'd highlight all that. Then there's Gen X. These are people born between 65 and 76. Current population is about 41 million. Interesting to note. So meetings should be only for issues that really require face-to-face communication. And here's what I'd like you to highlight. And they use emails as their go-to communication tool. Typically speaking, Gen Xers prefer emails as their go-to communication tool. Now, millennials, which Daniel is one. These people born between 77 and 95, coming to age 98 to 2006. Their current US population is 87 million. So they are the largest population right now. But I'm telling you, the boomers aren't that far behind at 76. Of course, it's going to get more so as the millennials get older and boomers get less. Gen Z, so that's born 96 and later. That's coming of age 2013 and onward. The US population 23 million, causing a little bit of concern in the workplace today. You know, they have different ways of doing things, and people that are older have a little impatience with that. But you know what? Think about the world today as a mixed bowl of salad. We need everything to make it work. We need the boomers, we need the Gen Xers, we need the millennials, we need the Gen Zs. We all can learn from each other. It's a very important consideration to keep in mind. So Gen Z, first generation to grow up with a smartphone. Highlight these words. Gen Z is used to constant connectivity, more ways to communicate, i.e. chat, text, social media, in-app comments, etc. They switch fast between work, friend, family, and other modes. They are more likely than other generations to carry their style. Crisp writing, abbreviations, and acronyms are big with them. Emojis convey sentiment. So with them, they do this across all modes. So I'm going to have a little fun with acronyms in a moment here. But number 3, with each person you communicate with, here's what I always suggest. Ask them what's the number 1, number 2 form of preferred communication. We may have mentioned that earlier, bears repeating. Just say, what's your number 1? What's your number 2 form of communication? If I can't get a hold of you this way, what would be my next best? So this way, I'm not thinking you're not answering your emails. It's just that you never answer your emails. You want me to text you. And then number 4, be sure to let them know your number 1, your number 2 preferred methods of communication. That would be important to know. Okay. Then top page 8 there. Number 5, if you would like to put your title next to your Zoom name to adjust your settings. Now if you want to do that, most of us know that, and maybe we don't want to put it up there, but in Zoom, you can go in there, do your edit. That's where I can get my initials up here, my master's degree, and for my certification with the assessments that I handle. You know, it helps people know more about you. Remember, when you're communicating online, anything you can do to help that person know more about you that you prefer to share with them, make it easy for them to know that. And then number 6, make sure you have a good camera for your video calls. And I'll tell you what's the best camera today, it seems, your iPhone. If you can use your phone, believe me, they have the best technology in these darn phones today. I mean, I've got a Brio Logitech lens up. It's got the glass lens on my camera. Not as good as my iPhone, but the iPhone doesn't give me as much flexibility, especially with a call like this. But fact is, make sure you have a good camera for your phone there. If you need to get a new cam, get a different webcam, get one. All right, so let's go back. We're going to finish up here with our little game that we're going to play here. So let's go here. Oh, I mentioned Slack earlier. That's what it is. We know what that is. Messaging gap. Thank you, Mark. So bridging the digital communication gap between generations. Let's look at the most popular digital abbreviations. So try and match the appropriate digital abbreviation. Now you've got this in your workbook. I've listed them there. So let's take a look. So LOL, what is that? What I'd like you to do, take your pen and just draw a line from the abbreviation to the phrase. So in this case, obviously, LOL. I used to think LOL was lots of love. Apparently it's not. It's laughing out loud. So go ahead, connect the ones that you think are there. So ASAP, what's that? FYI. Okay, those are more commonly used. G to G. which is got to go. FB, we all know is what? Facebook. MSG, message. Mm-hmm. Go down to the next one, next section there. So TTYL. Okay, connect to the one you feel is appropriate. That's right. Talk to you later. IMO.
IMHO too, in my humble opinion.
What's that one?
In my humble opinion, IMHO.
Yeah, there you go. And again, we can create our own. The main thing is we understand what other people's, what do they mean by these abbreviations. Then the next set there, MFW, my face when, MRW, my reaction when. That's an interesting one. IFYP, I feel your pain. Okay, that's good to know. Remember, the younger generations are very adept at using these acronyms. Here's the next section here. TNTL, trying not to laugh. JK, just kidding. IDC, I don't care. ILY, I love you. IMU, I miss you. ADIH, that's an interesting one. Another day in hell. And then the last set here. So IDC. Boy, if you've seen IDC, that's not good. Or ZZZ. That doesn't look good right from the beginning. Sleeping, bored, and tired. WYWH, wish you were here. And then TIME. Never thought about that. Time, tears in my eyes. And then BAE, before anyone else. So those are some acronyms, the top 25 that I found in my research. So keep that in mind that when you communicate with people, if you have to pull that part of the workbook out to understand what the heck does she mean by that? Okay, and that text or that communication that they're using. So with that said, let's move ahead here. So here's how I wanted to phrase our wrap up today. In terms of takeaway, what's one thing you're going to start doing based on what we learned here today? And what's one thing you're going to stop doing? So take a moment to look back through your workbook and then jot in there. What's one thing you're going to start doing? What's one thing you're going to stop doing? And we've made some progress. And when we get that completed, we'll kind of go around the room and just kind of do a quick, I'd like to hear from you and see what you had to say. That'd be my my feedback here. So as soon as you have that done, just look up towards the screen. I'll know you're finished. We'll get started. While we're waiting, just so you know, if you'd like to receive a free subscription to my newsletter, please visit my website or just email me. It comes out once a month, chock full of great information. So if that's something you'd like to know, or if you'd like to know more about the services I can do for different organizations, feel free to give me send me a text or an email, whatever you prefer, and we'll have a separate conversation about that. So I'm gonna hit the stop share button here. Okay, so as soon as you're done, look up towards the front here. All right, so Lenore, what's the one thing that you're gonna stop doing?
I'm gonna try to do a better job at keeping my microphone on.
Okay, great. And I'll give you a choice, Michael, either stop doing, start doing, whichever you're gonna choose to share with us.
I went with start doing, and I guess it was the paying more attention to the structure of the language and emails that others are using.
Excellent, thank you. Ben, how about you?
I wrote 3 words, know my audience.
There you go, perfect, powerful. Wendy?
So I was thinking about Zoom and things I could improve. The screen height when I'm on my own device. I can't, honestly, I tried to change my settings here and I'm limited about what I can do. And then I did appreciate your reminder to smile. Sometimes I think it's a screen and I don't realize it's a person on that screen.
That's right, thank you, very good. Raina?
I guess what I would start doing is asking people what their preferences is as far as form of communication, like you said, email or text. I usually just try and follow, my client or whoever I'm communicating with, follow their lead. If they are emailing me more, or if they're, calling, I try and, be perceptive of that, but I think I should just ask up front, and
Absolutely.
it starts it right off,
Wonderful. Great idea. I tell you, it cuts through all that misinterpretation and misunderstanding. Thank you. Daniel.
I'm gonna stop talking on the speakerphone sometimes, because I know that like when I talk to others when they're on their speaker, you can hear a lot of feedback. And yeah, that's what I'll stop
Great
doing.
point. And that's the thing about it. I used to use my speakerphone a lot before too. And if you don't, people sometimes don't want to tell you that. They don't want to embarrass you. So they just put up with it. And yeah, we don't need that. Susan, how about you?
Yeah, it's same as Raina. I confirm people's information, contact information, but I don't ask them what is the best way to reach them or how they prefer to communicate. So definitely that. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
Stop the trying to multitask.
Yes. There you go. Very important. Boy, I'll tell you, bad habits sometimes we collect over the years. Mark, how about you?
Well, I thought I was going to be unique on asking people to what their preferred communication was, but Raina and Susan beat me to
Okay. You know what's nice about that? When you hear other people say it again, it just reinforces it.
Reinforcement.
So good for us. Thank you for sharing that, Mark. And Sarah?
I'm going to reinforce what Mark and Raina and Ben and Susan all said the same thing, because I think that's one of the biggest things for me is just getting clear how people want to be communicating.
Nice. Very
Setting that
nice.
up first.
That's important. So important. And Lenore Wengert, if you're still there, she might just be recording it. That's fine. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what I'd like to do now is just pretty much close things up. Thank you so much for being part of our program today. I appreciate your participation. Now the challenge is up to you. Go out there and use these ideas. You've got the workbook, which is a great tool. It's got a lot of solid information in there. I would encourage you to go back and review it, keep it handy, share it with other people, just because we learn the most when we teach other people some things that we've already learned. That means we just reinforce it for ourselves. And as I mentioned earlier, if you're interested in anything I can do to help your organization out, please feel free to give me a shout. And however way you want to do that, we'll be happy to have that conversation. But in the meantime, I'd like to close with a very short poem. It goes just like this. And believe me, the longer I live, the longer I do these types of programs, and the more it makes more sense. So it goes like this. Life can't give you joy unless you really will it. Life just gives you time and space. It's up to you to fill it. Hey, thanks again for being part of the program today. We will have this recording available, and Wes will make that available through the chamber. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, give me a shout. But in the meantime, have a great weekend. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
All right,
Tom.
You're welcome. Okay.
Nice seeing everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.